Support for Carolina Business Review provided by Grant Thornton. Operating in more than 100 countries, our tax, audit, and advisory professionals specialize in helping companies unlock their growth potential. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of South Carolina, where healthcare is changing for the better. Find out how at ahealthysc.tv. And by Sunoco, a global manufacturer of consumer and industrial packaging products and provider of packaging services, with more than 300 operations in 35 countries.
Throughout the Carolinas, cranes are once again in the air. The increased confidence in the commercial real estate market is undeniable and so exciting. New projects are coming online in a variety of sectors: office, retail, mixed use, multifamily, entertainment, among others. But are we moving too fast? Is credit once again flowing too freely? Should we focus first on our aging and inadequate public infrastructure, especially roads, energy, and broadband? Welcome to the most widely watched source for Carolina business and public policy. I'm Diane Bailey, filling in for Chris William. Today, we are honored to welcome to the program leading experts in commercial real estate from across the Carolinas. Please stay with us.
Major funding also by Novant Health, bringing you world-class technology, clinicians, and care when and where you need it. The Duke Endowment, a private foundation enriching communities in the Carolinas through higher education, healthcare, rural churches, and children's services. And by Blue Cross and Blue Shield of North Carolina. Who's responsible for rising healthcare costs? Join us and many others in a candid discussion at letstalkcost.com. This edition of Carolina Business Review was recorded August 22nd, 2014. On this week's program, Andy Andrews of Dominion Realty, Jonathan Good of NAI Earle Furman, Emma Littlejohn of the Littlejohn Group, and David Lockwood from Colliers International.
Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. Let's just get right into it. Emma, tell us, from your vantage point, looking nationally and here in the Carolinas, what's your outlook for commercial real estate for the rest of 2014 and into the new year?
We're seeing a lot of attention, especially from the regional players that want to continue their growth in this area. A good bit from outside the market, and strong equity coming in. We feel like there will be some continued strong development in all sectors.
Anyone think we're moving too fast?
I don't think we're moving too fast. I think we're moving at a very, very healthy pace, but it's also a very cautious pace that's out there. It's not an overbuilding market. It's not rampant lending. It really is a very good, solid growth in the commercial real estate market right now.
In South Carolina, the annual revenue rate of growth decreased substantially from last year to this year, 9% to 2.5%. Is that having an impact in the real estate market that you're seeing in Columbia?
I'm in the upstate. In the upstate, really the pent-up demand, lack of product for 4 years prior to, we have not seen that slow down. To David's point, who's in Columbia, we believe and foresee through the end of the year that we're going to have nice, steady, slow, easy growth going on for at least the next 12 months.
We do have an undersupply of housing in a number of locations and sectors, and we're very happy that the home builders and the developers of mixed use are being aggressive and looking. I think the constraints, the banks are doing a good job. They're being critical in their lending practices. I think y'all might agree with that.
You mentioned multifamily. I feel like that's the elephant in the room in commercial real estate. Are we seeing too much multifamily? I know you say that housing is in low supply, but how about in that particular sector? Andy, do you have an opinion?
I think there was a long time that there wasn't any multifamily built, and we tend to forget that. If you go back to the years of 2007 all the way to almost 2012, nothing was constructed. Nobody was lending any money, and so those years, if you averaged them out on an annualized basis, those dropped almost 90% to what we're building today. So we're trying to still catch up to those years that we weren't constructing. So it is at a point where it's very active, There is some equity starting to take a deeper look in some areas that may be a little bit overbuilt, but they're site-specific today, more importantly than it was 2 years ago. So we're paying more close attention to exactly the site that we might do some multifamily than just the submarket or the area in general. Raleigh's very healthy for us, and Richmond's very good for us, and we see a continued growth. The millennials don't want to buy houses yet. They're not able to get the credit. That's a very difficult thing when you talk about housing. These young kids can't qualify for a loan, and they don't want the responsibility because they want to up and move quickly too.
Excuse me. The best thing about it is that we have a workforce here that companies looking understand and want to tap into. And so when we have people relocating without jobs, we have people coming here and having a job, that youth is bringing the attention of a lot of companies that would consider coming here.
And the upstate has more multifamily units planned now than ever in its history. But Andy and I spoke about before we started that the millennials are picking their cities and they're moving before they have jobs. And they're going to the places that they deem the places they want to live.
And John, there is such a broad cross-section of multifamily these days. What is really multifamily? Is it the apartment project? Is it the urban refurbishment of an old office building? Is it a warehouse? Is it loft apartments? The millennials and others have a really good cross-section to choose from today.
You've raised so many issues. Let's pick just one of them, and that is providing jobs for those millennials that you've all alluded to come to this region because of the quality of life, the vibrancy of the communities. Let's talk about economic development. In North Carolina, we've seen a massive restructuring of the economic development through the Department of Commerce. We've heard about various incentives. Let's start first with North Carolina and then take it to South Carolina and compare.
You couldn't ask for a more healthy environment right now than what's going on in Raleigh and Charlotte, and I'm not as familiar with some of the other cities. But we've attracted the likes of MetLife and Red Hat and Citrix in the Raleigh area, and you've got some great locations here in the Charlotte area. But I think the government's headed in the right direction by staying in the game. We talked about it before we came on set that if the state's not competitive in inviting companies to come here and creating incentives to compete with South Carolina, Virginia, and Alabama, these companies are going to go elsewhere. And so we do have to remain in the game, and it's important for these companies because it's a piece of the puzzle.
And in South Carolina, we were not pleased with the announcement because it makes it a more competitive field. I think South Carolina has had a couple of years of tremendous success in recruiting industry into the state. Boeing, Walmart suppliers, BMW expansion, I think we've done very well, but it is a very, very competitive field among the states to recruit industry. And like Andy said, you need every incentive possible to recruit, or actually, as we said, to make it to the second round for a company to choose your state. You have to have those incentives in place.
You mentioned another issue earlier that I want to touch on because we've got Greenville representation here and all of the exciting work that's happening led by Mayor Benjamin, who is recently on our program in Columbia with the urban renewal. Right, you've got the new stadium coming online. Greenville obviously pioneered in this. How does this affect the overall economy and the ability to attract new people and new companies?
Well, as Mayor Benjamin has said many times, if you have a strong urban core, you have a strong community. And we see the growth of urban areas, the downtown areas, all across the Carolinas. Columbia is no different. We've seen the transformation of a number of older office buildings into apartments, student housing. We see now the development of the ballpark downtown. We see the development of the Vista area. A lot of growth coming from the University of South Carolina. So it really has been a very good time for growth, and we will see a lot more of this growth in Columbia. Greenville has experienced it already for a couple of years, and they're just reaping the rewards from the infrastructure that they put in several years ago.
And the sales pitch for an outside of the market company that's coming into town, it's any time you can come downtown and there's stuff happening. They're Clemson students with their backpacks going in for their MBA classes. And so the activity level, it used to be you had to take somebody out on Thursday night to actually see somebody. And so the sales pitch side of convincing people the quality of life in the market is fantastic when you have that much activity in the urban core.
Emma, clearly it's a trend in the Carolinas. What are you seeing nationally? Are we on pace with other communities in terms of the urban renaissance?
Absolutely. I think that we are a trailing market. We always have been. We're small markets, relatively speaking. We're not a gateway city. And we get attention from certain types of people looking for that alternative. We were discussing before the show, we need to decide who we want to be and who do we want to recruit, who's going to be here. We have expensive locations. Charleston's expensive. Downtown Charlotte's expensive. We're not going to get certain people there. But what I love is that this infrastructure, light rail, ballparks, parks, cross-city trails, those things are the amenities of the new world. They're affordable, they're shared, they allow for social interaction, and that's what age groups want. The next wave for housing really will be the senior housings in our urban core. I'm very excited to see some local and regional players looking, and the infrastructure and the cultural aspects of this will bring that next wave. So we'll have some very vibrant, diverse neighborhoods continuing to be that way with the senior housing wave.
The conversation needs to be regional, of course. The rural communities are thriving as well, but need our help. Part of engaging all of our communities, including the rural, is having the transportation infrastructure. I had spent some time on 85, going up and back to your alma mater, Clemson, earlier this week. It's different on the South Carolina side than it is on the North Carolina side. Andy, do you see that the transportation infrastructure in North Carolina is a differentiator? Is it a selling point as we're attracting businesses and thinking about new commercial real estate developments?
It sure is a benefit for us. If you look at what's going on in Raleigh with the outer loop 540 connecting all of the rural areas to the urban core in a matter of 5 minutes where it used to take you a good 30 minutes. It makes it easier for companies to locate near transportation hubs. We are struggling in our area with the light rail. Charlotte's ahead of us on that and had great success connecting the millennials in their apartment dwelling units to downtown in a quick matter of seconds. And we need to get that engaged in our area, but we do see transportation as a benefit to the state. It's gotten a lot better than it was, and we need to look at what's happened in Houston with their 4 outer loops and the growth that they've sustained, so it's obviously important.
Figuring out how to pay for it, of course, is always the big question. There are talks about toll roads, mileage-based taxes, gas taxes, opinions around this table about the right approach or right mix of approaches?
I think North Carolina spends $150,000 a year per mile of road. South Carolina spends $15,000. And so it used to be that the gas tax was on our reasons to come to South Carolina, third lowest gas tax in the country. Now we wish we had North Carolina, so it's over twice what ours is. And South Carolina, most of our clients and most of the business leaders want a gas tax to go towards the $6 billion we need to improve the roads and replace the bridges that are failing as we speak.
Transportation needs to be, multi-faceted approach. We've got to have taxes, we've got to improve roads, we've got to accommodate bicycles, we've got to accommodate rail. We need to incorporate BRT. Bus rapid transit is the way of the world. We have not done that. There's been some psychological holdback. I don't know what you gentlemen see, but we've got to look at all because we've invested in the car. We're going to have cars, but we've got to look at alternatives to keep the real estate alive.
Let's shift gears a bit and talk about sustainability. The features, the innovative approaches to sustainability and some of the projects you're seeing. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, from a developer standpoint, we're doing gold LEED commercial buildings now. We're developing right now a platinum LEED building in downtown Raleigh. We've done Green Globe certification for renovation in Richmond, Virginia, and all of our apartments are National Home Builder certified. As an owner and a developer, do we get a return on that cost? And from past experience, I've been doing it for the last 7 years. The answer is not really. But is it the right thing to do? The answer is yes. And it's not filling up landfills. It's using the right materials. It's using local vendors. And our clients like it. They're just not going to pay any more for it. And so, a millennial's not going to go in and pay me $5 more a month because I'm green LEED or green certified than they might if David's apartment complex is not certified. But they like having it, and they want to. If as long as it's the same, they might choose my location. So that's what we are dealing with now, but it is important.
But I do think that you have a generation that is evolving, that as they become decision makers in the next 10 and 20 years, it is going to be vitally important to them to have these type of sustainable issues out there in the community, and they're going to be looking at developments that do meet those requirements.
And it is becoming more of a mandate. Now, I will tell you this, in urban centers, in most of the municipalities, they're requiring any buildings over a certain size to have a LEED certification. And so that sort of leads the way, pun on words, to keep us doing the right thing, but it is a good thing.
We're seeing a lot of the buildings designed to be LEED certified by the users, but then they're not spending the money to actually get the certification. So they're doing everything so they could qualify, but for whatever reason, it's a user rather than a developer doing the building, so they're just not going out spending the money to certify.
We're very excited on the home building front. We have a number of builders really trying, but we can speak to Bright Walk. It's a 100-acre community outside of Charlotte, and Standard Pacific's homes are built to LEED standards. Our consumer is looking to add solar, and we're accommodating them by having specific furnaces that are adaptable. So it's happening, and we're very excited. It really becomes, on the residential side, a land planning, a density issue at the upper end, if you either want it or you are not willing to pay for it. But when you're looking at costs of maintaining a home, if you're in that bracket, whether you're a millennium or an empty nester, that matters. So efficiency matters. It's going to continue to matter, and people are looking at the bottom line.
If I could just add something to that, from having some past experience, a 4-year-old building that we developed for one tenant in Raleigh as a build-to-suit, it's about 130,000 feet. The operational cost on that building, and it's Gold LEED certified, is about $1.30 a foot cheaper than a competitive building next door that's not Gold LEED certified. So there is some payback, and we are saving energy by doing it, and it's a proven fact. So those numbers are real time 4-year-old numbers. So
I think the one thing that you said, it is the right thing to do. That's
clearly
really,
it is.
That's really the overriding theme.
You mentioned that many builders are building to the certifications without actually getting the credential. Do you see that as well as a way to avoid the extra expense while meeting the demands of the marketplace because it is the right thing to do?
I think as the demand for the sustainable buildings increase, they're setting themselves up to implement it at the right time. It's just a cost-saving measure at this point.
We have new standards coming, and that's what's exciting in the technology world and exciting in the construction world. We have people thinking about this. So LEED has been a great thing. It's a great certification, but for our homes at Bright Walk, it's $2,000 if an owner wants to pay for that, to have that. We don't see that as a value for the resale at this juncture, but we'll see some exciting things happening in terms of new challenges, new thresholds, new levels of energy efficiency.
Let's talk about technology as it relates to energy efficiency, but also to broadband and communications, clearly a driver in successful commercial development. Are you hearing talk about this in Greenville?
We've been able to supply all that we need. We have not had a lot of call center work in Greenville yet, and we haven't seen it as we can't deliver the infrastructure that you need. But it's one of the last things that is asked for in our market in the upstate.
But technology is changing the way that we, at least office buildings, industrial plants, multifamily, it's changing the way that these facilities are being designed and being constructed. The office environment of today is totally different than it was 5 years ago. We do a lot of work with law firms. Law firms are changing very quickly right now. Most law firms find that they have way too much space just because of the ways that they use technology and the way that their daily lifestyle has changed inside the office.
Absolutely. Let's talk about speculative development. Emma, I want to come back to you with the national view. Are we more courageous and speculative here in the Carolinas, or are we a trailing market in this regard also?
I think everybody would agree we're a trailing market in that regard. People are putting their toes in a little bit. It's just we're small markets, so we don't have as much room for error, I would say. But some healthy investments.
We are a trailing market. We're not a top tier city. We're a second tier city in Raleigh, in our area right now, and we are doing some speculative office development. We believe the pent-up demand has been there for 4 or 5 years, and people, like David mentioned, are trying to become more efficient office users, hire more people, and take less space by having more workstations and using technology. And so we feel like there is a need for it. It's so far, knock on wood, we are, seeing some good activity, but it is it is risky going out there speculative. But it's not an everyday occurrence. It's not happening right around the corner.
David, what would you say would be the top policy issue for South Carolina decision makers on the government side to consider that would help the commercial real estate market continue to grow?
I think we could go down a long list of items that we would like to see, but it goes back to transportation. It goes back to infrastructure in South Carolina, and the growth of commercial real estate in South Carolina is going to occur because we spend the money on infrastructure. And if we can get our road situation straightened out, and I agree with John, I think constituents are ready for a gas tax. They're asking their elected officials to pass a gas tax. I think we will see that in the near future, and I think that is going to be the one thing that allows us to continue the momentum of growth that we've had for the last few years.
John, would you agree that infrastructure is the top issue in South Carolina?
I think infrastructure is number one. I think the second, as it relates to our recruitment, is to change our recruitment as an addition, keep what we're working on now, but we need to add some recruiting around white-collar jobs. We've been going through our lobbying channels to say, why can't we do something to recruit the technology companies and the more high-power paying jobs than we have in the market now? Because we've forever been an industrial and manufacturing workplace, and we'll continue to do that, but we'd like to add to that diversity for Columbia, for Greenville, for Charleston, where you're not going to see a lot of industrial in some of those markets because they're built out.
Andy, we've already talked about the economic development incentives coming out of Raleigh. Are there other issues lawmakers in Raleigh should be thinking about to encourage commercial real estate?
I think you nailed it. The incentives are a major part, and the corporate taxes are another issue that obviously it's on the forefront of everybody's mindset right now, and how to attract businesses to come to the area and grow in the North Carolina area. But it seems like the current administration is doing a nice job on attracting new business. So we're pretty happy with where we are right now. Hopefully it continues to grow. Our infrastructure seems to be holding up under the present conditions, but we can always use more. In our area, transportation is, we're so spread out that the cars play such an important role, but we're probably 20 years behind the times on our outer loops. But we're seeing good impact for what we've put in place right now.
Our time is short, so I'll leave with one last question. We started with the outlook, and only Emma got to answer. But because we have just a few seconds, I want you to give me 1 to 10, 10 being the best. What's your outlook for the rest of this year and into 2015?
9.
Emma?
8.
8 for this year, 9 for next year, and just very thankful that we're in the Carolinas right now.
I'll second that. I think 15 and 16 we're going to see a major explosion in the area because there's so much pent-up demand. So I'm going to say 8 for the remainder of this year, 9 for 15 and 16.
We're all watching construction costs.
Right.
Yes.
Tell us again with the national context. So we're getting, call it an 8.75 average here in the Carolinas. Do you think folks have that same optimism across the country?
Absolutely. I think so. I think there's enough capital on the sidelines that wants to be in the markets. I think we've just got to solve some lending issues that will allow things to move a little bit more quickly. I think we've just got to watch where labor and construction costs go and keep eye on how do we do job growth. We've got to have diversity in job growth.
Southeast is very fortunate as a whole.
And I think there are still markets around the country that have political problems, they have taxing problems, and they haven't been able to address those problems. And that's a great thing because that will continue to drive business into the Carolinas.
Well done. Thanks for joining us today. To each of our panelists, we do thank you. And to our viewers, thank you for being with us. These insights were important and sincerely appreciated. We'll see you next week, and until then, wish you all the best.
Major funding for Carolina Business Review was provided by the Duke Endowment, a private foundation enriching communities in the Carolinas through higher education, healthcare, rural churches, and children's services. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of North Carolina. Who's responsible for rising healthcare costs? Join us and many others in a candid discussion at letstalkcost.com. Grant Thornton. Operating in more than 100 countries, our tax, audit, and advisory professionals specialize in helping companies unlock their growth potential. Novant Health, bringing you world-class technology, clinicians, and care when and where you need it. Sunoco, a global manufacturer of consumer and industrial packaging products and provider of packaging services, with more than 300 operations in 35 countries. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of South Carolina, where healthcare is changing for the better. Find out how at ahealthysc.tv. And by viewers like you. Thank you. Promotional consideration provided by Business North Carolina Magazine. For more information, visit carolinabusinessreview.com.